It's notable that he again, though, tried to deflect when asked a question about Russian interference, though. And speaking of the Russians, while all of that is happening, the Mueller investigation is still chugging along. Word now from the New York Times that Mueller has secured another cooperator. The Times reports a businessman who advises the Crown Prince of the United Arab Emirates is now working with the special counsel and has appeared before the grand jury. George Nader has been answering questions about meetings with Trump associates in New York during the transition and meetings at the White House with Jared Kushner and Steve Bannon. Mueller's team has also asked Nader about his role in a January 2017 meeting in the Seychelles. That meeting also included Eric Prince, founder of the controversial Blackwater security firm, and an informal advisor to the Trump transition team, along with Kirill Dmitriev, a Russian investment fund manager said to be close to Vladimir Putin. Joining us now to talk about this is Mieke Eoyang, Vice President of the National Security Program at Third Way and a former House Intel Committee staffer, and Michael Allen, Managing Director at Beacon Global Strategies. He served on the National Security Council under President George W. Bush and is a former Majority Staff Director for the House Intelligence Committee. Welcome. Michael, I want to start with you. This is a complicated story. Help us to understand Nader's significance.
Well, Nader's possible significance is that he may provide a window into financial impropriety or perhaps the funneling of money from a foreign government or some foreign entity into one of the empires, let's say the real estate empire of the Kushners. We don't know this for a fact, but the articles suggest that Mueller's interested in him because of the relationships that George Nader may have with the Emirates or perhaps even the Russians at this quite picturesque meeting in the Indian Ocean at the Seychelles.
So Mueller is investigating collusion, he's investigating obstruction, he's investigating money laundering. Now we're getting word that he's investigating this. Mieke, how does it fit in? It seems like we're learning about a new branch of the investigation every single day.
That's right. And Mueller's charter allows him to look into crimes that he discovers in the course of his original investigation. So if he was looking into Russian influence and then ran across this meeting in the Seychelles, then discovers other potential influence peddling that's happening through that meeting, he's going to follow that trail wherever it may go. And part of the challenge here is that Trump's legacy in business is one where he has made a whole bunch of shady deals with people of different countries to try and get his real estate empire financed.
Michael, does it make sense, though, that Russia would use a third party in this way to try and exert influence? Does it make sense to you?
Well, it would make sense to me. If they were going to exert influence, they would want to direct the cash through as many front organizations or launder it, if you will, through as many organizations as possible so that its source might be obscured. Now, if you have the full force of the United States government's investigatory powers looking into it, I don't think it'll withstand scrutiny. But
Why
if
is
you
that?
never thought...
Why is that?
Well, I think the FBI has got very serious powers. I think they are inducing people to cooperate with them, and also we've got very likely other sources overseas who must be cooperating with the Mueller investigation.
Folks who can look into financial transactions, look into bank records, that sort of thing?
Most certainly. I mean, one of the first things that we did find out about Mueller's operation is that the lawyers he hired were definitely experts in money laundering, the financial system, and the real estate transaction world. So, you know, that's not to say anything happened, but these guys certainly have the expertise, the knowledge, and the info to make a case if it exists.
Mieke, explain why a back channel during a transition is a big deal.
So during the transition, we're talking about the president-elect, and he's not going to want to be in direct contact with the Russians, even though we know that Jared Kushner tried to set up a covert channel inside a Russian facility. They were trying any number of ways to create channels to speak to the Russians. Now remember, Eric Prince, this person who runs a mercenary corporation, is not just a Republican operative and advisor to the Trump campaign, but he is the brother of current Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. So he has deep roots in Republican politics and is perhaps a trusted individual with whom people would try and build relationships to get to the Trump campaign.
But why can't they establish relationships if it's an incoming administration?
So They will try and establish relationships that are through normal official channels and make calls from leader to leader. But for some of these things, they may try and establish back channels if they are concerned that there's too much public scrutiny on the regular diplomatic channels, which would be captured and recorded as official public records of the United States government.
Michael, how much does this story add to the smoke in the Mueller investigation, the smoke of Donald Trump's ties to Russia and what could have been happening before the election?
So I think it's sort of a faint outline of what may develop, and that is, were there other foreign entities or foreign players who may have played a brokerage role or sort of a middleman role in between Russia and the United States? We certainly don't know that. The bare facts we have before us don't allow us to sort of construct much more out of what we see in the New York Times. But you can sort of see a faint outline of where the special investigation may be headed.
Could it raise a question of whether or not Donald Trump had any financial payments from a Russian or a Russian intermediary in the 2016 election, something that could have gone to the funding of his campaign?
So that's entirely possible, that it could have been something that was funneled over there, or it could have been just a meeting that was simply trying to establish a back channel of communications. You want to go through the front door, but you also want to you don't want to be single-threaded when you're dealing with government relations and with the new president. You want to have as many connections as possible. So maybe they were just trying to set up a variety of vehicles.
Maybe. Michael Allen. Mieke, go ahead.
I was going to say, Katie, on this, it's also important because foreign governments are not actually allowed under our campaign finance laws to contribute directly to campaigns. So they would need to find intermediaries to be able to wash that money, to be able to get it to the campaign.
Wash that money never sounds like an above board thing when you use the word wash and money together. Mieke Eoyang, thank you very much. Michael Allen, thank you as well.